Do a couple of them all. One figure out where that is.
Good afternoon and welcome to our first meeting of March. We have a few people in our audience tonight, and hopefully we've got a few more watching us on Electric City Television. Invocation tonight will be given by Councilman Matt Harbin in respect to the flags be led by Councilman John Roberts. Please rise.
Let's pray. Dear Lord, I'm thankful we live in a free country. I pray for our police and our firefighters that you will keep them safe while protecting our citizens. I pray for our management team, our employees, and this council that our actions and decisions will be pleasing in your eyes. I pray for our country that as citizens we unite and make wise choices that please you. And all these things are in your name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we start our meeting tonight, we have a very special recognition, and it seems like this is becoming a regular thing here around this time of the year. But we have one of our Recreation Center teams that the Lady Lakers, so 1,200 girls, and they won the Palmetto State Basketball Championship. And for more than once, I know that, and I'm gonna get their coach Terry Sherman to come up and why don't you come up, Terry, while I'm talking? But the team went undefeated regular season. They were 11-0, and they won every tournament game, and they won 5 games. And so, and Derek, why don't you come up too? Because I think Derek probably could give a proper introduction about maybe what the league is and how you get to that spot, and then we get Terry to talk about the season and the team, and maybe we can meet the girls. There.
Well, this is Coach Terry. He's got the 1200 girls Lady Lakers team here. Finished the season 11-0, won 5 games to win the Palmetto State Championship. This is a tournament between Anderson, Pickens, Oconee, and Abbeville County. They did a very good job all year, on and off the court. And we're very proud of them. We're glad to have Terry and these girls in our community.
Good. Thank you, Derek. Terry.
All right. Yeah, expounding on what he said, I just want to thank God for the opportunity these young ladies. They did work so hard to do so much, and we can't forget about the ones that come before us. I appreciate Derek, Mr. Bevel, Miss Beatrice. You got a lot to do with this too, because I had a lot of people over there this summer, at the community center, and I worked with them. Remind you, we have 3 girls that ever played organized basketball. And so the girls that I work with, they come along, they caught on to what was going on, and it's kind of rubbed off on everybody else. Like I said, finished the season 16-0. This 5th undefeated season that I've had in a row. We don't want it 5 years in a row. But it ain't about me, it's about them girls. They got here, they work hard. Well, when I have to get the gym, I have to bug Derek about the gym. I know you get tired because we got so many teams. But these young ladies, they did a great job, and we want to thank y'all for acknowledging us, letting us come down and be a part of Anderson and the city. And thank you. I'm gonna let them say something in a minute. I just want to thank you.
Yes, sir. Why don't you girls come up?
Y'all come up.
Who wants to come up?
Yeah, all of them. All y'all come up.
Coach said everybody come up.
All of them got big grades.
Good.
Good.
Do me a favor. Tell everybody your name and what school you go to.
My name's Deanna, and I'm 11 years old, and I go to Robert Anderson.
Thank you.
My name is Jamala. I'm 11 years old and I go to Glenview Middle School. I'm Shakaya. I'm 12 and I go to McCants Middle School.
My name is Ayana. I'm 11 years old and I go to Robert Anderson Middle School.
My name is Kaylee. I'm 11 and I go to Glenview Middle School.
Very good. We're very proud of you girls, and your medals look good. And I want you to turn around, and I want you to shake these guys' hands behind you.
One more, that coach, she, I don't know why she's filming. She should be up here too. She was a big part of the team too. She kept everything on legit. Y'all turn around.
Give them a round of applause. You don't have to do that when you play basketball. Shake on each other.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
I don't have to say. Oh, he's here, got the drill. Hey, now.
The minutes of the February 25th meeting have been distributed. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes? Not hearing any, do I have a motion to approve? First by Mr. John Roberts, second by the Mayor Pro Tem. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes of February 25th pass unanimously. We don't have any old business, and we have 4 items of new business. And the first item of new business is request consideration of appointment to the Board of Commissioners of the Anderson Housing Authority. Ms. McEwen.
Mr. Mayor and Council, the City Council does appoint members to the Anderson Housing Authority Board. There's one board position that in term that needs to be addressed. It's the term of Mr. Jason Craddock is expired, and Mr. Craddock has expressed interest in continuing to serve on the board. The term for this position is a 5-year term expiring December the 31st, 2023, I'm sorry. And we have a letter also from the Executive Director, Jeff Tryon, from the Housing Authority of Anderson. Also saying Mr. Craddock has interest to continue serving on the board and serves as a very vital member to the board, particularly in his financial background.
Thank you, sir. Any questions or comments?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Chapman?
appreciate Mr. Craddock's past time with the board, and I would move forward in general approval, accepting this continue on.
First by Mr. Chapman, second by Mayor Pro Tem. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. And I'd like to thank the other 4 members who, one is here today. Mr. Irvin, appreciate it. Oh, I'm sorry, Charlie, I'll call you. Oh, well, you know, y'all look alike. Yeah. But, appreciate them serving that board. Request consideration, the second one is request consideration of a proposal for items related to pre-treatment program update. Ms. McEwen.
This is really the next step in our pre-treatment program. In January 14, 2019, our council meeting, we amended the sewer use ordinance, and that was to make some corrections and to update sewer use ordinance as far as the pre-treatment program. That was the first step. The second step here is before you, and it's to update some of the pre-treatment program limits and the headworks essentially that comes to discharge from our industrial users. So, knowing all the details, Jeff Caldwell, our utilities director, will present the details and what's before you as far as the contract.
Thank you, David. Our wastewater department administers this or manages this program for the city and the county, all the industry that discharge to one of our wastewater treatment plants. And so if they meet a certain category, they come under that program. So right now, Goldie is administering that program. They've been doing that for about a year now. And a lot of their the scope of their work is included in that first paragraph there by performing industry inspections and reviewing reports and it's tracking regulatory changes. That's kind of what this is about, and bringing those current industrial customers and their permits up to the current regulations. Like Mr. McEwen said, the sewer use ordinance was that first step, and so the headworks analysis which will be the first step of this proposal, basically determines the flow and the pollutants that our treatment plant can accept and still meet the discharge limits. So it's very important that we get this step right, and this will lead to new permits for each industry, new limits for each industry, and keep us in compliance with EPA and SCDHEC. The added benefit is that we have just received our renewal for our Generosity Creek disposal permit, and one of the schedules of compliance for that is to perform this headworks analysis at Genesee. We believe that it may we think it may satisfy the requirement for Rocky River when that one comes up in a few years. So that's the timing will depend on that, but the funding will be is from our wastewater department professional services budget. It'll come from our Genesee plant, our Rocky River plant, and our pretreatment departments. And we would recommend approval of this proposal to Goldie & Associates in the amount of $31,750.
Thank you, Jeff, and I'll open up for questions. Maybe the first question I have is the $31,750, is that an annual?
No, that is
something that we would do annually?
No, it's most of the time you do it about every 5 years.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Anything else, guys?
I would like to see this pass, so I would like to see that we approve the proposal for Goldie Associates in the amount of $31,750.
Thank you. That was first by Mr. Lockhart. Second by Mr. Matt Harvin. Any further discussion? This request approval of contract for $71,000. Different than mine, but request consideration of the asbestos abatement contract for blighted units located in the redevelopment focus area neighborhoods. The FAN. There's something different. It's one also that says request approval of $71,000 with Phillips Recovery for asbestos abatement of 13 houses.
Yes, that's correct. It's recommending that for Phillips Recovery as a low bidder.
Yeah.
So I'll cover the background of it.
Yep.
Mr. Mayor and Council, as you're aware, the city receives community development block grant funds from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. As part of our program activities, we participate in the demolition and clearance of substandard blighted housing within the city's redevelopment areas and our what we call focus area neighborhoods. Before you is 13 properties that are recommended for abatement, and the map is also attached showing the properties in their geographic area within the city. So the asbestos abatement is the next step towards demolishing these properties And we bidded the project out, received 5 bids. The lowest bids is from Phillips Recovery in the amount of $71,100. They are located in Pelzer, South Carolina. And it's our recommendation that we move forward with the asbestos abatement of these 13 houses for an amount of $71,100.
Good, thank you, sir. Comments, questions?
Mayor,
Ms. Roberts?
we have a very good relationship with Phillips Recovery. He does us a very good job, and quite frequently, he is the low bidder. So therefore, I would like to move that we accept his proposal for $71,100 for this project.
First by Mr. Jeff Roberts, second by Mr. Lockridge. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. Moving right along. Our last item of new business is request consideration of allocating community development block grant money, CDBG funds to the Salvation Army. Ms. McEwen?
Mayor and Council, as way of background, during the spring of 2018, city staff, citizens, business owners, social service organizations became concerned about what was becoming a growing population of homeless and displaced persons in Anderson. This presented several problems, including vagrancy, loitering, crime, untreated mental health and addiction issues that, if left unchecked, threaten the safety and economic viability of the city. The city facilitated several series of discussions around the issue and sought the counsel of several experts from several different fields, and from mental health to the Department of Social Services to other cities and best practices. And during this process, the Salvation Army began a test program and offered the day shelter. They recognized the problem as we had these discussions, stepped up and offered a day shelter, which I'll explain a little bit more here in a second what that means. The effort had an immediate and visible effect to start in addressing the problems of displaced persons, but had to be discounted due to the lack of funding. So they just started the program based on the current funding they had. Ultimately, the program ran for about 6 months, and then they had to end the program. As you're aware, most cities face such issues as they grow, and we're no exception. The issue is dense and complex, and there's no one solution. It is our hope that the proposal we put before you tonight to allocate funding to the Salvation Army will become part of a multi-pronged, proactive approach, which will also include strategic recommendations about law enforcement resources that we will put before you in the near future. Also, as you consider this recommendation from the staff, please be aware that the funding we will request will be allocated from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, the CDBG funds, the grant program. Emergency shelter and homeless support is a major initiative for HUD. Providing safe, decent, and sanitary emergency housing is a core objective to proactively address our needy and most vulnerable community members. Our recommendation to you meets 3 core areas for municipal partnership and successful local programs. 1, the specific use of money. 2, an engagement strategy. And 3, delivered by a trusted community partner. The specific use of the money is for the day shelter program and equipment. So currently, Salvation Army operates a sheltering program with about 49 beds, and it operates essentially from dusk to dawn, so overnight. The day shelter program operates during the day, so when the night shelter closes in the morning, currently when the day shelter is not operating, which is not operating now, they have no other place to go but to the streets and to other places to try to seek water, restroom, air conditioning, and get out of the weather elements. So this day shelter program really gives them a place to go in the daytime and provides access to program and support and case managers. The displaced persons will not only be off the streets, but also will be immersed on a path to solutions more rapidly. The engagement strategy. Local stakeholders met throughout 2018 and built consensus approval around the success of the Salvation Army and this test of the day program last summer. Discussions included School District 5, AmMed Health, Department of Social Services, Department of Mental Health, business, community members, just to name a few. And it's delivered by a trusted community partner. The Salvation Army has earned their reputation as a trusted, direct services provider both globally and locally. Salvation Army has a strategic ability and the will to partner with many other organizations and individuals. The city has the opportunity to join in this funding, this effort to address the serious issues of displaced persons in our community. With a track record of data-driven reporting and having successfully operated this program as a test, the Salvation Army fits within the parameters on the use of federal funding for emergency shelter and homeless support. Therefore, it's our city administration's recommendation to fund the Salvation Army's housing and homeless support program using community development block grant funds not to exceed $50,000. This would be allocating $5,128 per month. It would fund it for 6 months. And that funds their monthly budget costs for the day shelter program, which includes utilities, supplies, and also staffing, and a one-time allocation of $18,703 for furniture and equipment. If approved, the city will enter into a sub-recipient agreement with the Salvation Army to supply the funding through a reimbursement process. The funding of this program will fall under the CDBG Public Services Activities category, which is subject to a 15% cap of the city's block grant allocations. So for 6 months, and not to exceed $50,000, plus the one-time expenditure. This would start in April, and you would spend approximately $34,000 through June, and then you have some carryover money of $15,913 that would fund and get you up to through September for $50,000. The reason that we didn't recommend a longer period of time, say 12 months, is that the reason for the do not exceed 50,000 is because it is 15% of the cap of your block grant, or 15% of the amount of your block grant. And as the new block grant comes, we certainly don't always know the amount of funding of that. However, we're sure that going into the fiscal year that we would have at least $15,000 of availability there. We also do some other public service activities currently that comes out of that 15% cap. That's our fair housing program, and we hold several education seminars throughout the community on fair housing, and also pay some administrative staffing expenses out of that as well. And that makes up your total 15% cap. So with the benefits here and being proactive to the issues facing this community and the most vulnerable within our community, we recommend that you move forward with entering into a sub-recipient agreement with the Salvation Army to not exceed $50,000.
Good, thank you. That is a lot, and I know that we might have some questions, so we'll open up some questions. I would ask, maybe just leading off, just one quick one I thought about. So as I see DBG money, is the funding cycle the same as the federal government's cycle?
So we are able to go by our fiscal year as far as how they test us, how much money we are carrying. However, there is the block grant does come with the federal fiscal year.
Good. Ms. Chapman, then Ms. Stewart.
I just had a quick one. The agreement that was originally in our packet, and we have a new agreement that was on our in our chair today. Are there any differences between that, or is that?
Yes, sir. So there was a difference. This was a template that Mr. McLean worked on. We actually received this CDBG template for subrecipient grants, and we did make an error in it by using a sample agreement that said that there was a 10% match, and that language was not necessary, so it's been removed.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. McLean, there wasn't any other revisions.
I'd just like to first start off by, just saying, I support, us trying to do something to help the homeless population here in Anderson, but I just have, some heartaches with taking it out of our community development block grant funds, and I'll tell you why. And I think one of the things we're under the gun about is because, there was some funding that we didn't spend in appropriate time, and we was getting ready to lose the money, and we knew that since November
of last year when it came about. And I think that because of the ongoing meetings with the other partners, we said, hey, here's a way to fix it, here's a way to spend the money. I think that could be one solution to it, but, you know, for my 19 years on council, you know, we've had community organizations like the Eastside Concerned Citizens, the Southeast Anderson Community Task Force. You have the Westside Community Center who does other public services, which falls to be a subrecipient, because the city can have several subrecipients. It just doesn't need to be one, put all your eggs in the basket. And I think, I think we should have went to our neighborhood groups who we call ourselves working with every month. We come out to the community meetings, hear what the concerns are, to see if there's ways that we can improve the quality of life in our low to moderate income neighborhoods, whether that's through after-school tutorials, through that, helping fix up a wing at the Westside Community Center to help, further the activities that center provides to the citizens in that area. And I'm really struggling with approving up to $50,000 just for this one subrecipient. And what I would like to offer up is that if we move, since we're looking at two pots of money, we're looking at what we currently have here when we start our new fiscal year, July 1, is then that starts another pot of money with subrecipient. And from my understanding, we have about $80,000, which is 15% of that subrecipient cap out of our CDBG allocation that we have. And I know about $15,000 of that goes to our fair housing, so that still leaves about, like you said, $55,000 where, it could be used for several subrecipients. I would like to see if we move forward is to approve this up through June the 30th, and then in the meantime, set out a RFP to all nonprofits and to make sure they're in line to what we're doing, whether that's through the Westside Community Center, to give the Eastside Concerned Citizens, to give the Southeast Anderson Task Force, to submit proposals and say, hey, here's what we want to do to improve the quality of life in our neighborhoods. And then our staff can evaluate those and make sure they fall in line with the objectives that we're trying to move forward. And then beginning July 1, whether you give one organization $10,000, $5,000 to this organization, instead of just saying, hey, we're going to give you $15,000 off the top. Put it out there, because there's other worthy organizations who do things to help our community. Anderson Interfaith Ministries, helps women who are abused and battered over there. They help find them jobs in the shelter. That's a big thing. You see a lot of that, in our low to moderate income neighborhoods. And I know it was told to me that, well, this help, the homeless people in your community, Tony. Well, we don't see a lot of homeless people on the east side and south side. They may look homeless by the way they look to you and I, but they're not. They have places to go. They have homes to go to. So, I would just like to put that out, for our fellow council members to think about, is that going forward, July 1, let's do an RFP process to see if there's other worthy organizations to compete for that $55,000 and move this through the end of our fiscal year.
Thank you. I'll keep going. Any other comments, discussion?
Dr. Thompson?
I was thinking, I thought that there was a deadline as to when we needed to spend for extra money, the money we're talking about. And if we only spend $5,000 per month, so that would be way past. Was the deadline, did I think it was May or something like that?
So there's they run what they call a timelessness test to see how much money you're carrying at a period of time, and that's in May. And so that's to help out with not only funding the monthly cost to run the day shelter program. We also have the one-time expenditure that helps with the sheltering program, which is permanent.
It doesn't have to be spent by the end of May?
No.
No, this $50,000 doesn't have to be spent in May. When we talk about the dollars that need to be spent, by May is a balance that we are carrying of the entire block grant program, not this specific $50,000. So, I mean, you can fund this $50,000 without any regard to the timelessness test and the May deadline.
The other money that we're talking about that we need to spend, whatever deadline is, have we decided where it would go?
Yes, ma'am. We have some allocation, and the demolition projects are all part of that. We're doing some park improvements right now that you guys just recently approved the bid at the last meeting, and also we have some other activities that we do as well, and so that will help us meet our timelessness as far as that goes. And then coming before you pretty soon, we're going to be talking about some additional parks and recreation projects and some other projects that the council may suggest that's you have interest in that may help out the redevelopment areas.
I was asked, the task force you had meeting last year, all the ones that you mentioned, have they suggested anything that they would do in terms of program for the homeless? And we talking about the money, but District 5 and several others, have they made any suggestions of what they could do to help the homeless population? Oh,
absolutely. I mean, a lot's come out of that coalition meeting or task force meeting, if you will. One, it created great partnerships with the Department of Mental Health, who's here every day at our facility, most often to deal with folks that have been incarcerated on charges and to assess really their mental capacity and if they need additional help, and often they do. Their issue, of course, is beds and trying to place those individuals in beds. So what most often happens is those individuals, after their release from the jail or the correction facility, they don't have a bed waiting on them immediately. They are in the system, and so they try to work them into a facility, but it's between the time they get out of the correctional facility and the time that they're in the system, if you will, and on a waiting list to get a bed at a mental health facility is where they don't have a place to go. And that's where the Salvation Army steps in and provides that gap. And so they do so. And they also, DSS was very much involved in the process. And we work closely with DSS. Our law enforcement works very closely with them. School District 5, they have a homeless coordinator that keeps up with all the homeless from the homeless students and those families across District 5. And so all that coordination took place. As far as the most direct service that stood out and they stepped up was the Salvation Army, and it was very successful. It sheltered around 40 people during the day. For the day shelter, sheltered around 40 people a day and kept them out of the elements. Kept them off streets where often they get in trouble. They're looking for water, and a merchant may not want them in there. They're looking to use the restroom. The police get called, and so they either end up one or two places. Really, they either end up in jail or they end up at the hospital. And this actually, which doesn't help them at all, because they're released essentially the next day from the correction facility, and also released very shortly thereafter from the hospital facility. And this allows them to get into a system where they have a case manager. Salvation Army is aware of who they are and can provide the next step of assistance. And there's a pathway towards housing, permanent housing. And that's really what you want. But first, you got to start with, for these folks that are in survival mode, that are just the most vulnerable in our community, that are on the streets, and they're just looking for water, food, and don't know where, they don't have a place to sleep at night. They need that first before they can really get a pathway to success or get permanent housing and kind of figure out how they can live on their own.
The money we are suggesting would go to a day services, is what you're saying?
Day shelter, yes, ma'am.
Day shelter, and this would take care of what percentage of the ones who's still homeless would? I'm sure it wouldn't accommodate everybody who's homeless, but how many folk you think this would accommodate?
So they have some data that they ran for us that they kept up with. Let me find it real quick. I got it right behind the sheet.
It's approximately.
Yeah, so they served 312 people through the day shelter during the time they operated. and this was in 2018. They had average 40 individuals there, and I'm gonna read the note here. It says 40% of the individuals served were unsheltered, which means that they were in any kind of shelter program. So 40% of them were just on the streets, and then 80% of those are currently, or 80% of them were currently on the waiting list. So there's a waiting list into their more long-term sheltering program. The Salvation Army has also a short-term sheltering program, their emergency sheltering program, and that's where our allocation of funds would help assist them on that. Where it's too cold, it's bad weather, they take anybody in, regardless. And then they have a sheltering program that they get you into that leads you to, and a case manager is assigned to you, and they work with you to help develop skill sets, help develop you to the next level in the continuum of care.
Well, I know that, something needs to be done with the homeless. And at the end of the $50,000, I guess we'd stop and look and see what differences we'd made and where do we go from here. I mean, that's something we have to look at. Is the money, I'm sure, will help. At the end of that, they're going to need more than just the $50,000. So I guess we'll say, well, what do we do now?
Right, and I
Should we
mean,
help?
if successful, it would be administrator's recommendation that we continue the program. I mean, it was certainly successful in the previous year. And let me add one more statistic too, because this was important as far as I was saying, people getting into the system, getting on the radar of mental health, DSS, getting the next level of care they need. 80% of the people that they saw did not have any files open with health system, a case manager, or behavioral health. And so that's 80% of the people that really had no, that weren't on anybody's radar as far as needing assistance, but ended up in the day shelter program. And I think that's very valuable because once they end up there, they can get that help and that they're in the program and they're able to get access to the assistance they need.
So I would really like to see not just a bed and food, but a way to help these folk maybe get occupation, get a job. Because, you just want to, with the old saying, you give a man a fish, he'll fish for a day, but you show him how to fish, and he'll fish for a lifetime. So along with bedding, we need to look at what can we do to help these folk further their lives, not just have a bed to sleep in at Salvation Army.
And that's really what they're in the business of doing. They know that they have those partnerships to when a case manager reviews what's going on with that individual, and that's where the 80% again didn't have any access to that. But once they were in the day shelter program, they did, and it gets them to the next level of care. And that's really beyond the our city government. That's getting into the mental health system or the behavioral health system, or just assistance and skill sets to finding a job.
Mr. Mayor? Anything, maybe, do you guys have anything? Okay, Don and then Matt.
So, so when I first, obviously I attended a couple of those and early on meetings when the entire community came together because of the issue of the homelessness that we were having and how to deal with the merchants that were having issues with them and it was affecting businesses and things like that. So, of course, when I read the proposal, my first concern is to make sure that we don't set a precedent of how we're going to start funding nonprofit because I believe, just as Mr. Stewart mentioned, a bunch of nonprofits that are very worthy. They do very great causes for our community, and they're much appreciated. So I tried to separate it between looking at what some of those nonprofits do versus what this proposal is suggesting that it do. And for me, I felt like this is serving. It's as you defined it, Mr. Manager, that there was 3 criteria that had to be met, and with those 3 criteria being met, and having such a important need that is, I guess, growing downtown, and and it's not just in our community, we're seeing it across all of South Carolina, and I think across the United States, but I felt like this was a positive way. The one last concern that I had was making sure that we don't become the sole funding source for it, so that there's got to be a method so that we just don't continue it inevitably for years on end. There's got to be a solution to what it's creating, and then maybe find out if there's other partners that can assist with the funding source. But for this, I'm in agreement with it. I think it's a test program, but we take this first 50,000 and see, and maybe get some stats back to find out, a proven track record of what it's done for us long term.
Let's go, Mr. Harvin. Before Matt goes, clarify this for me, that in regards to CDBG money, and that's the pot of money that we have, that we're proposing here, is that part of their focus, the federal government HUD's?
Yeah, it's a core objective of them, because I mean it is housing and urban development. So any type of housing, of course, is their interest and their core mission.
Yeah.
However, as this is at the top of the list because it's emergency housing, it's emergency sheltering. So it's very important to them, and then it can lead to more of a permanent housing situation for them.
Okay, Mr. Harvin.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm just gonna go back a little bit, and I may have a couple of questions. When we started going to the meetings, the community meetings that we hosted, first off, thanks for, I think our citizens are thankful that, we got everybody together in one room and could talk about a very complex issue that really didn't have, a quick solution. I know our merchants downtown and in other areas of the city, not just downtown, had concerns, like Mr. Chapman said, affecting revenue, and there wasn't a good quick answer to it. And I think the city took the lead and sort of got together with some folks, and I personally don't think this is the long-term solution. It might be a bridge to get to the long-term solution, but I think having mental health, getting them in, I think it was the third meeting, or maybe the second meeting they came to, and, they started having a streamline of how to get them into the mental health part of it. I agree with, what's been said. I think Mr. Chapman and Mr. Stewart, I think it's a slippery slope when we start funding nonprofits. But with that, with what Mr. Stewart said, I don't have a problem partnering with nonprofits if we meet a goal, of a direction of where we want to go with a city, with our city finances. And, do I think this is going to solve our homeless problem and get everybody off the streets for the next 6 months? No. But I think it's going to give, 312 people, I guess it's 312 different people that were averaging 40 a day, somewhere to go and, get a cup of coffee and be able to talk. Look, who else can offer these services? I know in the meeting, not every nonprofit was there, but there were all the big time people were in the room, and nobody stepped up with a solution except the Salvation Army. And they said, after about the third meeting, they said, I'd be willing to do this. We don't have any money to do it, but we'll figure out a way to do it and just try it. And nobody, other than just piling them up and shipping them out, which were some of the comments, which, I don't agree with either. That was the only nonprofit that had any kind of initiative to figure out a way to just bridge it, just get them to tomorrow. And then the next day, until we can get an avenue for them, to get a better life, Dr. Thompson, like you said, to make the next step. And so with that, I'm gonna make a motion that we approve this tonight.
And I second it.
I have a first on the table, Mr. Harvin, second by Mr. Lockridge. John Roberts, and then Mr. Stewart.
Okay, thank you. So, to sound like a broken record, just reiterating everything everyone said here, it's a situation that continues to impact us all. It's a growing situation. I serve on another nonprofit that helps aid and assist in these with homelessness and cleanliness. And you know, I think the Salvation Army, he did step up, and he was the first one to offer, you know, to help. It almost came too little, too late. We almost waited too long to kind of get this one going. There was a lot, you know, increase in traffic, increase in, you know, merchant complaints, and but we did. And you know, sometimes you want to say it may not be a city problem, but it is. I think this isn't an answer. I think this is a temporary fix to a big problem. Again, I agree with pushing this forward wholly. There are other nonprofits and other organizations, et cetera, that we do need to work with, and Mr. Stewart's 100% right. There are some big ones that impact this area and our community, and I feel we need to work with them and look at that. And with that being said, I feel like maybe as a council, maybe we need to have some type of true understanding of exactly what facet CDBG really does work from in every angle, because I can tell you, I don't know 100%. And, you know, it's maybe not how it works, but where can we allocate dollars to, and what can we look at doing? Not just spending it for asbestos removal or whatever we're doing tonight, you know. So I'd like to see some type of information provided to us on that. But again, I'm 100% for it. I'm very thankful the city stepped up, and thankful for all those involved, merchants, staff members, and people that made this happen. I'm for this, but I would like to see trying to help other organizations out if possible.
I'm gonna do Ms. Lockridge before, I think.
Okay.
Rick hadn't said anything.
I think there were a lot of good points made by Councilman Stewart and then all the other members of our council. It's important to also recognize the fact that there are other organizations or other entities within the community of Anderson that could help with this funding. I would like to see within this 6-month period, this is sort of a beginning for this process, but I would like to see other entities such as hospitals, such as churches, such as other people that are within our community brought into this, because it's not just a problem for the city, it's a problem for the community. These are people that are at their end. They have nowhere to go. They have no place to even to go to the bathroom, no place to get water, no place to cool off. These are people at the end of their rope, so to speak, and they need help from somebody. But I do believe that we could get other folks within the community, other than our city, to help fund this process.
I think probably, David, you might want to.
Yes, I should probably address that.
Yeah, I think.
They have
Before I let David, I do remember, I think this was in the earlier meetings, and the hospital's always been at the table on this one. And the hospital, as one of their officials said, that before the Salvation Army opened their doors during the day center was the emergency room. And so it was a direct impact to the hospital system. And they've got a vested interest to be involved in this. What were you going to say, David?
Yes, sir. And so, some of the information that was provided by Captain Rob Dolby, they have a sheltering budget without the day shelter of about $750,000. So those funds come throughout the community, and they include some stakeholders: Anderson County, the Gambrell Foundation, Wells Fargo, Abney Foundation, Allen Foundation, Foothills Community Foundation, DSS, Walmart Community Foundation, Samsung, Bridgestone, Anderson Town Center Mall, among 35 individual donors. So, I mean, there's a lot of people that have come to the table to help them have this sheltering budget. What has been more direct impact to us that was missing, and that they stood up and the Salvation Army offered to do at really their cost burden within their budget, just as a test, was the day shelter. And at the time, we were having a very high arrest rate for displaced persons. So it was costing the city a lot of money and resources as far as the correctional center, and then trying to work with mental health. And this really wasn't the place for them. It's not where they needed to be, but it's where they ended up. Second place they ended up was AmMed Health, your hospital, and the ER. And in third place would be outside of that, but that was a large population of it, was just anywhere they could find a place to put their head, or go hang out for a little while, or public facility, public gathering space. And so this was a huge direct impact that made a major difference. I know the task force team, if you will, calling it that, recognized the impact it had, especially all the other organizations involved. The city realized that. We saw a drop in those being incarcerated, and also with calls for service for displaced persons it's citywide. I mean, it's not just downtown. I mean, it's really citywide.
We'll circle back to Mr. Stewart.
Yes, like I said, I've called around and I've worked for a community development block grant for a number of years, and for HUD, and worked for our city of Anderson community development. I'm very familiar with how the program operates, and even like when we look at other neighborhoods and compare ourselves to the city of Greenville, city of Spartanburg, all community development block grant programs, when they get subrecipients, they want to make sure it's fair for everybody. They just don't go select one entity. They put an RFP process out there to get requests for proposals so that they can, see which one meets the needs of the goals of the community, and then fund those organizations. And Mr. City Manager, what's our surplus in our budget this year?
Out of the general fund?
Out of the general fund.
It's almost $2 million, but also a lot of it's going to be earmarked for capital facilities, so I think it's a little misleading.
Okay, we got $2 million in general fund. Getting back to what Councilman Roberts said, he would like to know a little bit about how you can spend that subrecipient money, which is about $80,000 a year, provided that we get the same allotment from HUD come July 1. Well, what I would just offer before we take a final vote on it is that let's fund the Salvation Army the $50,000 like they requested, but let's fund them through Community Development Block Grant through June the 30th, which leaves about $17,000. Why can't we take $17,000 out of their general fund to go with the $33,000 to make up that $50,000? Because if we can spend $30,000 or $40,000 for a water fountain in front of City Hall, we can spend $17,000, to help, fund the homeless. That way, when we start our July 1 budget, we've got $80,000. Council will have a chance to see how that community development block grants, for those who don't know how it works, see how it works, and then we can put a plan in place and put direction for staff to go forward to see how we can fund several subrecipients, if that's the way we're going to move forward. So I would ask that.
I would think, and you were saying something that I was thinking. I thought you were saying it a little bit different. You was talking about general fund money, and I think the test of this city with a budget surplus and making money every year is to look at funds that are outside of CDBG, looking at the general fund to somehow or another address the communities. And I see the city of Greenville doing it. I see the city of Spartanburg doing it. But I think that we have to have a plan in place, and I would challenge the management team to have that plan in place going forward. But I do think with $17,000, that's not an insignificant amount of money. But we have money within a program specifically designed for this. So I would,
But, Mr. Mayor, let me
yeah,
interrupt. But what I'm trying to get, it goes into two different fiscal years, you know, because if you're going ahead and allocating money after July
we can
1,
continue having the conversation. I'm not saying that we stop the conversation right now. I'm saying that we continue the conversation because it's a bigger conversation. So,
but I just wouldn't want us to vote on moving forward with 50,000, say we're going to put $50,000 out of 2 fiscal years out of CDBG, when, you know, if we just spend the money for this fiscal year, which is about $33,000, supplement, and if we're gonna commit $50,000 to the Salvation Army, go ahead and commit it, but 17 of that would come out of our general fund money. That way, when July 1 comes around, we've got $80,000 in a pot that we can send out RFPs, that for any other nonprofits who do good in this community, that they can compete for those $80,000 instead of
I'm just
go ahead and take it.
the pot might be bigger than 80,000.
And just as a point of clarity, we do use general fund money to cover community development. They have a 20% administrative cap on their, out of the grant funding. We exceed that, and therefore the general fund does contribute to, the community development department to keep it going.
But general fund has never been used to supplement neighborhood projects and neighborhood housing. You know, in my night, you correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Thompson. Have we ever used general fund money to move forward neighborhood initiatives, you know?
Usually we use federal.
And that's what I'm getting at. And I don't, what would be the issue with using $17,000 of general fund to make up the difference?
I think that's a discussion for the council.
I do. And I guess right now we have a motion on the table, and we could defeat this motion. We don't know, but we had a first and a second.
Let's put that alternative motion in there.
Well, we have to vote on this motion right now because.
Let's hear the motion then.
The motion is to accept the staff's recommendation of the recommendation in
the funding mechanism.
May I ask one question before we
Yep.
proceed? So the pot of money, the 80,000, we're saying, but if we've allocated that money, when we reapply, there's a chance that money's going to be increased, correct?
Probably
It could be increased or decreased. We just don't know. Right. Usually it's been staying about the same, you know, but there's actually more and more cities that become entitlement communities, and that's what we are, that automatically receive that block grant. So as more and more communities receive that designation, it really does get stretched more thin, and we've seen a reduction over the years.
But I think then we're going to put it together a task force to review. I mean, I think that's
to review what the staff would do that.
Well,
that's what most.
I'm just saying if we get a tremendous amount of applications in, and you know,
I mean, more likely you'll see the 80,000 that's available. I mean, we still got to do fair housing. But so what's the balance left of that? You know, around $55,000. You know, probably will shrink, to be honest with you.
We're never gonna know what we would get next time. You know, looking at politically what's going on now, we can't determine that we'll get the same amount of money.
That's right.
Correct.
We may get less money. We don't know that.
Mr. Mayor. Yes, I want to add. I feel like if we had not had these prior meetings and we had not had all the majority of the players that do a lot of it, then I would say, Mr. Stewart, your direction would be more valid, I guess, in my eyes, because I would say, but because they showed up and the Salvation Army was the one who actually had a game plan, or at least an option to be able to create a solution. It ended up being a positive solution, temporarily anyway, until it was postponed or canceled. I still feel like we should go forward with this, and then if we do have, I definitely agree we need to move forward, and we have other nonprofits that could maybe could provide other solutions, but I still think we need to move forward with this for a 6-month trial period and see how it moves forward. So
I would agree, Councilman Chapman, but there's a little bit more to the story. You know, and it just came to my attention, not, you know, probably the last few weeks, maybe you guys knew about it, I was just left out. I didn't know that HUD summoned us to Washington, you know, because we were getting ready to lose some money. Well, you know, if, you know, and evidently this took place back in November, and typically when, you know, we have HUD findings or whatever, usually council is made aware of it, and we take correction action and that type of thing, but if we're gonna lose some money, and we knew about it, that they were looking at it maybe last year, but we've had ample enough time to say, hey, what are the other organizations, you know, what do we want to do with that money? It's not like this just came about once the homeless issues came about, you know, it was all about trying to spend money or lose the money back to the federal government. And I'm just saying, I think that we should have been made aware of it, and that way that we would have had time to look at other organizations and worthy organizations.
I'll go ahead and call the vote. Have a first and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
We have Mr. Stewart opposed. Administrative briefing, Ms. McEwen.
I just want to point out a couple things on the calendar that we have. Tomorrow night, Rick Lawford and your neighborhood community meeting
If
is.
they have anybody that wants to come.
I will be there participating. Is at the Recreation Center and is at 6:30 p.m. On Thursday, March the 14th, it's the Anderson County Municipal Association meeting. It's at 7 p.m. held in Pelzer and West Pelzer, since they're neighbors to each other. Also on the Tuesday the 19th, we have the West Side Community Coalition meeting at 4 p.m. at the West Side Community Center. And on Thursday the 21st, Southeast Anderson Task Force meeting at 5:30 p.m. Hannah West Side Career Campus. With that, that completes my administrative report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Have a first by Mr. John Roberts, second by Mr. Stewart. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? We stand adjourned.